I think we are all very excited for this panel. And so I'd just like to introduce who will be speaking as a collective, and then individually they'll introduce themselves. So we are welcoming Women in Comics Collective International, which is an artistic and informative initiative that began in May 2012 that serves to educate communities about the role and merit of women working in the comic book multimedia industries and highlight the importance of literacy through the comic book medium. They host panel discussions, gallery exhibitions, and workshops in New York City and beyond. So Women in Comics Collective International es una iniciativa artística e informativa que se formó en mayo del 2012 con la meta de explicar el rol y el mérito de las mujeres en la industria de los cómicos, entre otros medios, y de destacar la importancia de alfabetismo a través del medio de los cómics. Organizan discusiones, exposiciones y talleres por toda la ciudad y más. You can learn more on womenincomicscollective.org. All right, so I'm going to pass the mic over to Shamika Mitchell.
Hello, everyone. How are you? How's everything going? Are you enjoying your Sunday? Isn't this fabulous? Thank you to Word Up and Robbie in particular for putting this together and for inviting us, Robbie Regal. So thank you very much. I'm going to be the moderator for this afternoon, and I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. We do have one more panelist that is coming. She is in traffic, but she'll be here in just a moment. So we'll just pass the mic.
Hey. Hello, everyone. My name is Regine L. Sawyer. I am the coordinator and founder of the Women in Comics Collective International. I'm also the publisher, writer at Lock It Down Productions. I've been publishing comic books for about 13 years. It's a little blurry, but I think it's about 13 years. And Women in Comics, we were established in 2017. So we've been doing things since for about 7 years. We also have our own convention, and the convention has been taking place for, I think this year was we had our 5th annual this year at the Queens Museum, yeah.
My name is Carol Burrell, and I also do comics under the pen name Cleo, and I've been a children's book and comics editor for almost 20 years, and I'm also a translator and letterer of comics, as well as doing a web comic online, and I've worked on a few books, and yeah, that's my whole story.
And I am an associate professor of English with the State University of New York. I teach comics, literature, composition. I also am working with Muslim artists in particular. With Muslim artists. I started what's called Salam Fandom, and we had our first panel at New York Comic Con of October 2018. We then had Super Salam at San Diego Comic Con this past July. We also are going to have another panel that's emphasizing cosplay for New York Comic Con this year. So that's going to be really fun. It's going to be on Saturday, October 5th, if you happen to be around. And then we also are, as of this week, right, Carol? This is fairly new, that Alitha, thanks to Alitha, who is here. It's okay. It's okay. Okay. It happens. So thanks to Alitha, Carol and I have the opportunity to go with Alitha and a delegation of other United States artists to Algeria, and we're leaving on the 29th of this month for their Comic-Con, and I'm spreading Salam fandom now across the ocean, so this is going to be a lot of fun. And I'll give Alitha a moment to so Alitha will introduce herself.
Why did you do that to me? Yeah, but I don't know what to say. All right, my name's Alitha Martinez, and I'm a comic book artist. I've been working in the industry for 20 years. My first book was Iron Man. My latest books are Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and a book called Omni for Humanoids. I've drawn everything except Superman and Wonder Woman. That's about it.
And you're the person that pulled us into this opportunity in Algeria. You went last year, right?
Yes, I traveled with the U.S. State Department's World Speaker Program, and I went to Algiers last year, and this year they're the country of honor. So they are inviting some artists out there. Every year, a different country is the country of honor. Last year it was Canada, but this year it's us. So it's going to be an experience. An eye-opening experience. So it's fun. I love Algiers.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we have a lost child. Can we make an announcement? Not a lost child. She lost her mom. Hi, everyone. Attention. There's a toddler or maybe 3 or 4-year-old little girl looking for her mom. We got her? I have her. She's not mine, though. Oh, okay. So she's coming toward the stage. If you're missing your little girl, please come to the stage. Okay.
Those things do happen, right? It's okay, thank you. No problem. Lost children are a priority. So I'm going to be moderating, as I told you, and I'm going to start. We can't start with origin stories because we'll be here till next year. But tell us about what makes you happy to work in comics.
I'm sorry. Oh, I have a microphone in my hand. What makes me especially happy to work in comics right now is that, my origin story is that I was a children's book editor, and now I get to work on comics mostly for kids, everything from little toddlers to teenagers, and there's been such an expansion. It really hasn't grown to fill all the needs of all the different stories that everybody wants, and seeing more and more kids want to read the comics and more libraries and bookstores carrying them is what brings me the most joy in comics right now.
You should speak next because I'm the last person coming, so it's not fair.
Well, it's funny because I've sort of been going through a process of trying to find what makes me happy in comics again. And I'm still actually going through that motion. The only thing I can really say is earlier this week, I decided to go into a comic book shop, something I hadn't done in a long time, for pleasure, because usually I go for work. And I allowed myself to just immerse myself in the stacks, go through the books, like literally smelling the pages, looking at the written word, and absorbing that and feeling good about that. So presently, that's what I'm feeling good about, just allowing myself to be a fan again and not being so immersed in the work. So that's what's making me happy right now.
That's a kind of hard question because I don't think comics have ever made me happy. Just because I feel it's something I always had to do. I wanted to tell a story. I grew up wanting to tell stories. And it's been such a long journey. I've been drawing comics since they were letting animals off the ark. So it's been a while for me. But I feel just now, since last year, being able to reach other people, being able to change the culture of comics, seeing new artists come in, and they have no idea the struggle I went through to get this far. They've never had to hear, girls don't draw comics. They never had to sit there and say, oh, you don't draw like a girl. All these things, or you can't draw this because you're a girl. They don't hear these things anymore. I heard those things. And now I teach at SVA, the School of Visual Arts. Before my class was all boys, I was the only girl. I had to drop out. It was too much of a masculine culture. You just were pushed out of it. And now I teach there, and my class is 90% women. So I even had just one boy in my class. Now the school just started. I have only 2 boys in my class, and they have no idea. So I fought very hard so that other people can farm. And the fight's not over. I climb one mountain and be like, oh, there's a hole. Oh, God. Okay. But I think that's why I'm here. That's what I'm here to do.
Definitely what has inspired me and keeps me happy with comics is, I would say, the manga anime industry, which I've been a part of fandom since I was a little girl, going all the way back to, like, Hello Kitty. And then like Voltron and all of the other little, at the time we called it Japanimation, and then it was anime, right? And then it was Japanese anime. And so with that, I think because the Japanese market does have an industry that's aimed at girls with shoujo manga and anime, that I always found a space in comics because I was looking at other girls who were in school and who were awkward or who were magical like Sailor Moon. And that kept me inspired, as opposed to the US side, where they really didn't have attention directed at girls as fans in the same way. And it was mostly like very sexualized women characters with the outfits and the flawless makeup and gravity-defying bustiers and thigh-high boots. It just didn't look very comfortable, and it didn't look very accessible. But Storm, I think, for me in U.S. comics, was the one that kept me motivated and happy. And I always felt like, I want to be a mutant. I want to be Storm. I want to control the weather so it can snow in the middle of August. And then I found out last year that I am a mutant, but that's a whole other story. And I am, though. But then I said, now I'm a little step closer to Storm. So I can't control the weather yet. But I will take credit for this gorgeous weather we have today. So by all means, you can thank me later. Definitely when we look at motivations for other people and for ourselves as fans, what are you liking right now that's coming out? Is there anything that's making you interested? Is there anything that's inspiring you creatively in a certain way, whether it's comics, whether it's something in film and television? Is there something that you said, ooh, I really am like tapped into this particular thing and it's got my juices going, it's got my creative energies flowing?
You want to start? I gotta think. Oh, yeah. Oh, really? Yes. It's the start of the football season. Yeah. I don't know if anybody heard, but Antonio Brown is now with the Patriots. So
yes.
I'm just wondering who's the Patriots will be playing in the Super Bowl this year. Okay. I'm just going to call it right now. I wonder who they're going to be playing. And, of course, the Jets game, Le'Veon Bell is playing today, the Browns. Oh, my God. See? My juices are so flowing. You're lucky I'm here. I have DVR, and I'm like, yes, I'll be back. I'm going to watch all my games. So I'm so happy. It's like Christmas. It started last Thursday, and it's going to continue all the way through January. So happy. Can't wait.
Well, wait.
Do you draw when you're watching sports?
Well, yeah, because my desk face away from the television, so I can only hear it. But, oh, my God, I was so excited when I heard. Now, come on. That was orchestrated entirely and completely from last year. I'm telling you, when Antonio Brown showed up on the sideline wearing that fur coat, it's because he just left New England and it was cold there. I'm just going to put that out there right now. It was so good.
Now, in Japanese manga and anime, they do have series where, like, it's a basketball series or a swim
Those
team.
Those are boring.
So do you but there's never been a football series. They don't
play football. Look at the size of them.
No, but I mean, to think that the United States comics industry, why haven't they done a football team series or title?
They don't pay any money. You'd have to pay those people for their likenesses. Are you kidding me?
Okay.
Come on, Marvel, DC. And what do we need that for when we have Superman and Aquaman?
And the video games?
And name more. Here, you say.
I have an answer for that. Actually, I did a comic book and with a football player. Okay. And they're doing it individually as people and going out and looking for artists and writers and stuff. And I may actually be writing some more books. Hopefully that book one day see the light of day. They've been trying to push it around. So it's a possibility. It's a possibility. We'll see.
Now, what are you checking for?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Really?
Nothing even culinary? Like there's nothing that's getting your creativity flowing?
Right now, well, like I said, I'm still in a process where I'm trying to reclaim that.
Okay.
So I'm discovering things about myself and then sort of reaching outward. Okay. So like I said, like the step was going into the shop and just going through and checking and seeing. Outside of that, the the only other inspiration was just sort of looking out there into the industry and seeing a lot of other stuff that's going on outside of like creativity, things that are negative, with like harassment and so forth. And I kind of just said, well, you know what? Let me get my druthers together and let me start creating and making, because things are getting a little haywire and things are being detracted from the actual work.
I'm not sure I'm inspired by anything. That's terrible. I'm about a summer behind on everything I'm supposed to be doing. But I'm personally always encouraged when I see new ideas. Like I said, I was an editor, so often people are coming to me with their ideas, or young and upcoming artists or kids or teenagers or people still in art school are sort of presenting their first ideas and how they might get comics out there. So that inspires me on their behalf. It makes me want to keep going and keep doing things. Yeah, I need to get my groove back and be a little bit more excited because I don't watch football, so I don't know what I'm going to do.
Now, this is a kids lit festival, and I notice usually when we have the Wink Con and we have the children's workshops, that being around kids often keeps me, there's a light or that sparks, because for kids, they're just so outside the paradigm in that way. You know, we'll say like, oh, you know, this is how it's supposed to be. And the kid's like, why can't they, you know, be like tree fairies that control rainbows? And you're like, that's really cool. Being in a kids festival, one of the things also is trying to get kids interested in the process of creativity. What has your experience been being around kids or teaching kids? Is it something that's a unique challenge for kids to learn how to be creative, or is it curating their creativity, or do you know what I mean? Like people say there's rules to helping kids to be creative. I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of child development rules and things we're supposed to follow when we're doing books for kids, or you know, sort of try to help them get to the next level where you can understand it. Like if you're 3, you don't understand things the way you're going to understand them when you're 8 or 9 or 10. But I also find that, you know, kids have the same problems that adult artists have, in that how do I get started? How do I get permission to just be creative? I think we all reach a stage when we're kids, or as we get a little bit older and we're not little kindergartners anymore, where we're like, well, am I allowed? Is there a rule? How do I do a comic? So when I do a workshop, I'll say, you know what? Don't worry about that. We're going to do something really simple. You have 4 panels, and you're going to tell a story in just 4 pictures. You don't even have to be able to draw it. We're going to just tell it in 4 pictures, and I'll do some story that all the kids know in 4 pictures. So I think that helps us break free from the, you know, what are the rules? How do I tell a story? How am I supposed to get started? What do I do with this blank page? Am I supposed to put word balloons in this? Does it have to be a superhero? No, forget it. Just try to get it out there. Try to get your story out of your head. And if it ends up being upside down on the back of the page, or it's 14 pages and one of them's folded in half, it doesn't matter, because comics are all about the visual. It doesn't have to follow any kind of format except to be able to express yourself to someone else who can then look at it and get a story back from you.
You want to go ahead? No. Okay. So I've had the opportunity to teach comic classes to people who don't even speak my language. And that's a challenge. How do you reach people who you can't communicate with? I try to play to the strength of every person, meaning that we all have a very strong, what I call a painter's eye. We have the ability to mimic, and we can recognize perspective. So you take the fear out of it by I made a little booklet, I put it down in front of them. It has step-by-step instructions, and I've noticed no matter where I go in the world, people can easily follow that, from the youngest of the young to the oldest of the old, and they've drawn a face to the mathematics of drawing faces, because we're very good at recognizing our human mass. And that's like the first step. Once they do that, then they realize you just add practice to that, and then now I can draw this. So in an hour's time, they've gone from, I've never drawn a circle before, I can't, that feeling of I can't, to look, I've drawn something that looks almost exactly like it looks in the book, and that's because you're drawing to the mathematics of it. You're not drawing with a style in mind. You're not drawing even with skill in mind. You're playing to the strength that you're born with.
For the past, I think about 2 years, I've been teaching comic book writing classes to middle schoolers, elementary schoolers, and high schoolers. And it's been very interesting to see how they each take on the project. And one thing is, and this goes back to you, Carol, about the creativity. Telling them, like, look, you can write any story or create any story that you want, and they never believe me. They never believe me. It's always, well, are you sure? Can I write about a fairy in a tree with can chase rainbows? You know, for the high school, it's like, can I write any language I want? And I'm like, well, it depends. It depends on the context. Is it gratuitous and all that stuff? But I generally say, like, hey, you have the absolute freedom to create what you want. but it's up to you. It's like, what do you enjoy? What do you like? I'm like, yeah, we love all the Marvel films and the DC films. That's great. If you want to do fan fiction, we can do that. But if there's something that you'd always wanted to write about or something that you were always interested in, this is the medium to do it. And that usually across the board is pretty helpful to them, and it helps to stir that creativity.
So this is where I'm going to turn some questions to the audience to ask, what are you reading? What are you liking right now? In comics, in picture books, in animation, anything? Charlie Brown? No. Dragon Ball Z? No. One Punch Man is hilarious. Saitama is hilarious. I'm current with the new episodes that are coming out right now. And right, but it's also this whole politics, right? Back to the issue of, what makes somebody a hero and how can you be heroic and then be a certain level, because they're all different grades, right? So it's like the S class and the ones who are A. And it's the same thing, I think, in My Hero Academia, too, where they have these levels to how, good of a hero you are and whether or not you get to be the one that goes out first versus the ones that are like the backup on the bench if this was a team. Right? The people that don't play versus the starters. It's the same kind of thing. So it was interesting for me with One Punch Man that the villain that is out right now, right? The hero killer, right? That he is somebody who resents that system and says, like, why is it that we have this binary? And then, why do we marginalize people with good intentions because they're not the starters on the team? And so that turns him into a villain, but it's actually the hero system and its politics that make him bad. So I'm curious to see where they're going to go with it. What else? Yes, hi. Tokyo Ghoul. I teach Tokyo Ghoul in my class. So I don't know. How old are you? I don't know that you should be reading Tokyo Ghoul. I mean, it's a little mature, but it is a really good series about humanity in particular. Kaneki is so complicated as a character because he had a crush on this girl, and then he finally asked her on a date, and it turns out that she's a ghoul, and she tries to kill him. And then he wakes up from this murderous encounter, and because some scaffolding fell on her, they took her organs and transplanted them into him to get him to live. So now he becomes half ghoul. And so the entire series is about, am I still human? What does it mean to be a ghoul? Can we coexist? Right? So there are these very complex conversations happening in some of the comics. What else are you reading? What else are you liking? I can't say that I've read everything, but yeah. Another? What are you reading? What are you liking? Yeah. Soul Eater. Oh gosh, Soul Eater. So this whole issue of, how am I going to get through this challenge in this afterlife situation, right? And then it's also about like the demons. It's always about demons and humans for the most part, right? It's like the good and the bad. And then it's also just like how the anime series isn't always aligned with the manga series. And so for people who are into the anime, always check out the manga because you may get some surprises. Just like in American comics, between what happens in like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and what happens in the comic book universe, they don't always hang out. So definitely poke around and see what else is out there. Yeah. Bleach? We gotta talk because Bleach is another one.
No, it's not as bad.
It's not as bad as Tokyo Ghoul, but yeah. Do you follow Bleach?
I'm a huge Bleach fan.
So I'll let you tell me about how awesome. What is so amazing about it for you?
What's so amazing about Bleach is how the artwork and the written word correlates, and it just puts together this beautiful story about this young man who becomes he doesn't collect souls, he reaps them.
Yeah, Reaper.
Reaps them, and he becomes a substitute soul reaper because he came across a Soul Reaper and she got injured, and her powers transferred to him when he tried to protect her. So now he has to do her work. So that's how it begins, and then expands into this very, very spacious story that's going on for a very long time. So it's amazing.
And it's an epic story. I would say my favorite right now is currently, because I do have my one single favorite, which is a shoujo title. But my favorite that I'm still current on is One Piece, because Luffy has been at sea trying to be a pirate king since 1999. And the manga is still published, and the anime is still coming out. It's like in the 11th or 12th season or something. And I think it's the highest selling manga title in manga history. So that tells you a lot about how much money some of this stuff is making. And that's one of the things that I find to be most troubling, is that people that are interested in comics or children's books or gaming or anime, that they automatically are motivated by money, saying like, I want to do something and make a lot of money. And they think that, oh yeah, if I draw Iron Man or whatever, I can be the next, Stan Lee or something. And that's not really how it works. The industry has its own rules and regulations about how you can create characters of your own versus working on other characters that are established, right? It's not that you can, right? I mean, it's not that, like, just because you draw Iron Man doesn't mean Iron Man is yours, or does it?
No, Iron Man doesn't belong.
Right, that's what I mean. Like, but that's the perception that people say, oh, you draw Iron Man, oh, you must be getting, like, all the Marvel checks every time Iron Man comes out, and it's like, that's a different system.
Why are you going to touch that stuff?
Oh.
I've drawn, those are my mighty Marvel masters.
Yes.
I cannot speak against them.
No.
No, I own nothing I touch nothing, I own nothing, I do, because I'm work for hire, so I have to do it as they tell me. I can't add anything to the story aside my interpretation of that story. When I drew Black Panther World of Wakanda, I got to add a bunch of new characters that I don't own and I will not be compensated for in that way, because it is part of Marvel. You get the satisfaction of going, I'm part of this giant war machine and I've made it better. But as far as what people indict me for, going, I hate this, and these decisions that the one major decision I made is I put full costumes on these women. They took them out of that metal brassiere. I don't know what that was about. That was crazy.
I know.
And took them out of the high heels. We can't fight in those. And I noticed that translated over into the movie. I'm like, oh, thank God, oh God, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
So that made my whole day. That was like, oh, finally, a decent costume on a woman.
Okay. And definitely, I saw that also with the new She-Ra. If you watch the She-Ra series on Netflix, that was with Noelle Stevenson, who's behind Lumberjanes, if you're familiar with Lumberjanes. And if you remember the She-Ra from the 1980s, they all had this very like drag queen kind of look with very heavy blush and bustiers and thigh highs and big hair and heavy eyeshadow, and all of them look that way. And now She-Ra is an adolescent girl. They wear leggings and shorts and flats mostly. And they're not sexualized either, which I think is important if you're aiming the audience at adolescent girls, that they have adolescent girls' bodies for the most part. So when we think about how characters get envisioned, you may have your vision for what you want to do with a character, but when you're creating your own characters, then you can have all the fun in the world, right?
I think the fact that more and more people are comfortable with reading comics, whatever your age is, whether, you don't have to be like the 20 to 30-year-old guy who's the only person who's going to be reading these comics, and more creators are starting to do comics for all sorts of different types of story, whether it's football or ghouls. We're going to see a lot more variety in what the visual looks like, who's being depicted. Can the heroine be a 14-year-old girl and her 12-year-old brother, and they look like someone who's sitting in the park right now? Yes, because there are more people reading the stories, wanting the stories, and creating the stories, where if all we had to choose from were DC, Marvel, and maybe some horror comics, there used to be all kinds of comics and all kinds of comic books on the shelves when my mother was a kid, but it kind of condensed into one type of comic, which is great. Superheroes and capes are great, but as we mentioned earlier, there are a whole lot of other ways to be a hero.
And what about you with your creativity of the certain characters in your titles?
Was there a question?
Yes.
I thought it was a statement. That was a question. Can you repeat it?
About how you create your own characters, right? So we were talking about how people get motivated into the industry, right? And that they want to make characters that can transcend. So with you motivated by making your characters, right? Because you have 4 titles. There was The Rippers.
Yeah, I have 3 titles: Eating Vampires, Ice Witch, and The Rippers. And I mean, image-wise, I mean, yeah, I wanted the characters to be covered. That was number one. But, you know, I wasn't even thinking like that when I first, like, The Rippers was my first series, and I created that when I was in high school. And my thought process was what's just functional, because I would draw all the characters out. I would draw their uniforms, and all of my designs is what I use to this day for all of my characters. So it was just about what's functional, what's practical. So that was the most important part. Also, going to a story like Eating Vampires, I try to be a little bit more cognizant of what the characters are wearing, because it is, in the beginning, a period piece, and then it moves to present day and the future and so forth. So for Delia Gable, who's the first artist on Eating Vampires, she did some research on how women were dressed in that time period, because they were in. When the book opens up, they're in the Sahara Desert. Right. And so when they're dressed in hijab and they're dressed in niqab, they're almost completely covered. So that was very important.
So as we get ready to wrap up, please tell us, other than our international trip that's going in 2.5 weeks, what else is on the horizon for you? New York Comic Con, for one.
Well, New York Comic Con is next month. Women in Comics will have a booth number 2270. I'll also be on 2 panels. We'll also have our annual Comics and Cocktails party that's taking place on, I think, October 5th. Also, the Urban Action Expo is in November. I'll be there as well. And I have some couple of new things that are coming out, so people can go to my website and check it out. I'm at lockitdown.com, and you can see some of the things that we're doing there.
In my hand. Aside from, I have a bunch of illustration projects to catch up on, and I'm editing a lot of random people's comics for random publishers. I'm currently working on a project where I get to draw the largest animals that humans ever interacted with. So, like really giant sloths and really giant armadillos. Not dinosaurs, because humans weren't around when the dinosaurs were around, but they're just the biggest animals that humans ever met. So I'm working on that project right now. And just trying to keep my head above water right now, and hopefully doing a lot more projects to come.
Well, the last issue of Moon Girl, issue 47, is coming out. 46 is on the shelf right now. Issue 2 of Omni is coming out. Hopefully I'll hold on to that one till issue 4, then back to Marvel of my own books. You, Me, and Ever 4, finally getting that done. And also Foreign, I've got it edited by Carol. Books 6, 7, and 8, I'll hopefully have them all out in this year.
All right. Well, that concludes our panel. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the festival.